Hi everyone, my name is Lung Pamai. Thanks for signing up and for showing your interest to take this online lesson. As mentioned in the email, the goal of this course is to bring absolute beginners up to speed with VBA programming by telling you things only on need-to-know basis using layman's term and by exploring practical examples. This is one of my personal initiatives, so this comes absolutely at no cost. I will try to wrap this up in about 4 to 5 weeks. Each of these videos will come with simple assignments to check your understanding, and you will have to submit your assignments to get access to the next contents. Once you complete all these assignments or projects, you will be issued a certificate on behalf of VBA A to Z channel that can be verified from our webpage. If you have not signed up yet, you can find the link in the video description. So what is programming? Programming simply means writing instructions for a computer to perform various tasks. These instructions are written using programming language that a computer can understand. VBA is a programming language which stands for Visual Basic for Applications. Here, application refers to Office applications like Excel, Access Database, Word document, Outlook, and so on. So VBA is specially designed for Office applications, which means you can automate almost anything you do within these applications and much more using other libraries. And once you're familiar with VBA, you can easily transition to .NET, C#, and for that matter, you can learn any other programming language. VBA comes inbuilt with Office applications, so once you have Microsoft Office installed, development environment comes with it. In my opinion, the best thing about VBA is it is easy to learn because syntaxes are very easy to read like sentences, and it's a great skill to have, especially if you work a lot using Office applications or if your automation targets applications like Excel, Access Database, Outlook, Word, and so on. You'll come to know that there are powerful libraries and functions and references that you can use within VBA. Which you can use to connect to web pages, servers, databases, build custom forms, user interface, functions, and much more. In this lesson, you'll learn how to set up the development environment, get familiar with the code editor, learn some important shortcuts and tools that you can use while writing your code. We'll also get a quick refresher on Excel objects and then learn how to use them in your program. So by the end of this lesson, you'll learn how to create this simple form or user interface, learn how to automatically show watermark when the field is blank. We'll write a program to read these inputs and submit them to Excel table and return the execution status here, okay? And then I'll be including many more tips as we go on. Now let's go ahead and set up the development environment. I'm going to close my Excel and start a brand new Excel. So from your program, I'm going to write here in search, I'm going to write Excel and open up a new Excel. Okay, so once you're here, probably you'll see a developer tab here. That is what we are trying to enable now. Go to File and to your options. And then from Customize Ribbon section, you just check this box, okay, developer. Now depending on the Office version you have, if you want, you can rename it as well. For example, let's say you want it to be dev instead of developer, you can do that, okay? Once you check this box, you click on OK. Okay, so the developer tab has been successfully added. Before we proceed, let's take care of the macro security. If you don't see this button here because of your Office version, go to File and Options and go to your Trust Center settings and click on this macro settings. Now you can control if you want to run a program in your application, be it Excel, Access Database, and so on. So if you want to disable, this is the option you go for. If you want to enable it without any prompt, then you can go for this. This could be dangerous because if you download something from online, which is a VBA program or a macro, it could install, like additional software which could be dangerous. Okay, if you want to get a prompt every time, this is the option you can go for. And if you want to, like disable all macros except the ones that you trust digitally signed, you can go for this. But for now, you can either go for this or this. And I normally use this. Or the other option is you can add a trusted location, and you can run like VBA program from that location only. Okay, so that is also another way if you're very particular about the security. So in that scenario, you can add a location. For example, I'm gonna go to my desktop and add a new folder here called projects, maybe VBA projects, and I'm gonna select the folder, click OK. I'm gonna include all the subfolders as well in the trusted location, and click on OK, and then OK. For example, now I've already disabled all the macros. Okay, so for example, I'm gonna close this Excel. This is the one I was demonstrating earlier. If I click on this button, it'll say that it cannot run because macro is disabled. Now if I copy this file inside this folder, this is the one with the trusted location, and if I, let's say, Steven Taylor or something, and click submit, so it runs from this particular folder. Okay, so that's a little bit on the security part for now. We'll touch base a bit more as we proceed. Okay, so going back to Excel, going back to developer tab, and this macro recorder is pretty neat feature that you can use, but today we're not going to use this. It can become very handy when you're working with Excel objects. This portion, don't need to worry about it. Basically, you can use this to install or uninstall Office add-ins, Excel add-ins, COM add-ins, which are developed from other environments, okay, like VB.NET and so on. Here, Forms Control, Activex Control, I'm going to walk you through a bit more in detail at a later stage, but for now, it's not important. Okay, now let's go to Visual Basic Editor. Either you can click here or press Alt F11. Okay, so every time you hover your mouse on these controls, if there's a shortcut, you normally see them. So I'm gonna press Alt F11. Okay, and once you come here, if you don't see anything, normally you'll see Project Explorer. The shortcut is Control R. This is whatever I'm telling you now. This is one-time settings. And these settings that you do here is applicable across all applications. This same window can be launched from Access Database, from Word document, from PowerPoint, Outlook, and so on. The other window I'm interested is F4 project properties window, sorry, and just keep this enabled. If this is out somewhere, also it's fine. You can just drag it to the extreme bottom here, and then it will dock it here. Okay. And then I have these two toolbars already added, Debug and Edit. I'm gonna go and show you how to bring that in. Toolbars, Debug, Edit. Okay, so if I choose this and this, now you can drag and drop wherever you want. If you want to put it here or here, for example, you can put it here like that as well, or like this, or even like this. Okay, so it's up to you. You can put it this side as well. Okay, so once you organize that, it's not a showstopper. It's not gonna stop us from anything, even if you don't add this. And then what else? We'll go through the main things. References, it's very important, but we're not gonna use it now. You'll start using this once you start working with external data and all this. Okay, but just to keep on the back of your mind, this is where you're gonna go and add references. And then go to options. Here by default this is going to be checked. Just uncheck this. Is very annoying. If your syntax is not correct, it's going to tell you all the time that it's not correct. For now, just keep this unchecked, and then if you want, you can bring it back later on. Here the only thing that you'll see that is different will be the font size, and this probably is color new font for you. I've installed this custom source code Pro. If you want, you can find the link in the video description. You can install that in your computer. Okay, but font really doesn't matter. And then I'm just gonna leave this as it is. and then once you come here docking, this is going to be looking like this for you. For me, I'm just gonna check this box for now. You can just leave that unchecked. And then so that's pretty much it. I'm gonna talk to you a bit more in some time. Okay, so first let's write our first code, and see how it goes. Okay, so for that, insert a module, go to insert and then click on module. Okay, now once you insert a module, you see that properties window says module here. You can rename the name of the module based on what code you're gonna write here. So all this white space that you see here, this is where we are gonna write our code. And then there are additional objects that you see here based on your current workbook structure. If you add more sheets here, for example, like this, I added 2 more sheets, you'll see them reflect here. Okay, all these are objects. We're gonna talk more about it in a bit. So without any further ado, let's write our first code. Okay, so there's 2 types of codes or procedures that you can write. One is called sub, and then the other one is called function. Function can return a value. You're already familiar with function. I'm just gonna press Alt F11 to go back here. Function sum is for example example of a function. Let's say there's 1 and 11 and 2 here, and then you put a sum function here, hit tab, and then you select these 2 cells. This function basically sums whatever number that you select or cells that you select, like this. Yeah, so this is an example of a sum, VLOOKUP. All these are, you know, like sum ifs. All these functions are something we use on regular basis. So function is example of that. It can return a value based on the instruction that is inside a function, and then sub procedures just execute whatever instruction is written there. So the statement or the syntax to write a sub procedure starts with sub. Okay, after a space, put the name of your code. So let's say that you want to write a code to greet every time the workbook opens up. You can say greet or greet user, something like that. And before we start writing our first line of code, the shortcut key that is important here is Ctrl J. Okay, so I'm gonna press Ctrl J. Now it will automatically list things once you type. Okay, now I'm gonna type here message box, MSG. Okay, this is a syntax for a message box, and once you hit space, you'll see the things that you can pass. Okay, the arguments, the parameters that you can pass to this particular method or yeah, to a function. So I'm gonna, within double quotes, I'm gonna write hello from VBA, something like that. Okay, I'm gonna go outside this box and hit enter. Okay, and the way to run this will be click anywhere within this sub and end sub and run it like this. Click here. So hello from VBA. Okay, so that's your first code. You can pause the video and then you can write this part. Now anything that you write between these you know, these 2 lines is gonna be executed when you run the macro. Okay, now if you want to put an instruction like a command, you can just use a single code and write this is to greet users, something like that. Okay, now you can also put a comment here, message box sample code, something like that. Okay, this is also something you can do. Okay, now let me also quickly show you example of a function. Now just to give you a practical example, let's say that you have to check if the sheet exists before you write data to it. If the sheet is not there and you're trying to write a data to it, it's going to give an error, right? So those are like, the function can check those kind of things, if the folder exists or if the file exists and so on. But for now, in this particular example, let's write a function to return application username. Okay, so for that, to see that visually, If you go to options, you'll see here is the username. So let's say we want to return a username of whoever is that at that particular point of time running the macro. For that, let's start with function. Same as sub, we'll write function, and then we'll write the name of the function. Let's call this app user, something like that. Okay, so once you hit enter, you'll see that this is added and this end line is added. Anything that you add here are the instructions for this function. In the end, whatever you want to return, you will say app user is equal to, and then here you pass the value. Okay, so for example, let's say that I want to return Pamai for now. To test this, you can copy this code, you can go in here, type in equal to, and then enter. So it will return Pamai. Okay, now similarly, if you want this to be dynamic, I'm gonna remove this part. I'm gonna hit Ctrl J again. It's a good practice to do this. And then application. Okay, I'm gonna use my arrow key up down to select this. Once it's highlighted in blue, you can hit tab and then you can put a dot. Once you put a dot, you'll see all the methods or actions that you can perform with this or properties associated with that. Okay, we're gonna talk about it in a bit. Now from here you can type in user and then you can select username option. Okay, now if I run this again from here, it's gonna return Lung Pamai. Okay, now if I go back and change Lung Pamai to L Pamai and click OK, then it should return the updated name. Okay, so let's say someone else opens this macro and runs this, it will return their username. So instead of hello from VBA, let's say we want to return hello to that particular user, we can concatenate the string here. Okay, now I'm gonna get rid of this hello and then all this. Now hello and space, and then I'm gonna close this here, and then to concatenate you can use this and then you can copy this function and then you can just put it here. Okay, and if I run this now, this part will be it's here hard-coded, but this part will be pulled from here. Okay, so if you want to see line by line, the shortcut for that is F8. The first shortcut we used earlier was Ctrl J, and then now we can use F8. Okay, F8 is to execute the code line by line. Now I'm gonna press F8 and then I'm gonna go line by line. I'm gonna press again. Now it goes to this function because this part, once it reaches here, it goes in here. Okay, and then it comes here and then it gets the value as I place my cursor on top of this. Okay, this is actually variable. We're gonna talk about it at a later stage and in the coming videos. Now press F8 again and then it comes back here and then execute this particular line. Okay, and then it finishes. So this is a very a simple example of how you can write your first code. You pause the video and try to do it yourself. Okay, now let's say that we want the event to fire this particular like code as soon as the workbook opens. The way to do that will be to use any of the objects. For example, let's say I want to run as soon as the workbook open. You can use this workbook object. Okay, and then from here you can select workbook and then it's gonna automatically select opened event. Okay, so this code will run as soon as the workbook open. So whatever code you put in here or instruction you pass here is gonna run. Okay, so let's say we want to run this code. I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna paste it here, and now I'm gonna save this. Okay, so once you save your macro, it's gonna ask the location. I'm gonna save this here in VBA project. I'm gonna name this as lesson 1, and you can save VBA program or macros only in a certain type of Excel workbooks. similarly with other applications, so you look out for those options. For example, in Excel, XLSM, XLSB, XLS, you can also create add-ins, so you'll choose this option if you're creating add-ins. Okay, we'll talk more about those. For now, use this XLSM, okay, micro enabled workbook, and then I'm gonna save it here as a lesson 1. Okay, so now to demonstrate this, I'm gonna close this workbook, go to this folder, I'm gonna run lesson 1. Okay, so as soon as I open this, it's gonna run that code. So hello and then L-PAMI. Okay, now if we go back, Alt F11, you can concatenate further. Okay, here after this you can also put, concatenate this with maybe exclamation mark, something like that. Okay, like this. Now you can also trigger this code using buttons or various other ways to do it. Maybe from the ribbon as well, you can do that. Let me demonstrate a couple of examples. First, if you click on macros, here, the same can be accessed from somewhere here as well. Here, once you go here, this same option is there. Well, if you go to your developer and then macros, you can edit as well, or you can run from here as well, like this. Okay, or you can also assign a shortcut key and so on. If you're recording, you can set this option in the beginning, but you can also set a shortcut key and put a description as well about it, or delete it as well. Okay, now so we've set up the security, we've written our first sub procedure, we've written our first function which returns application username. We've learned how to put a comment to the code. Let's put a comment here as well. This function is going to return application username. Okay, now let's say that you want to run this particular code using a button. You can also insert forms control this button from here. As soon as you click or draw somewhere here like this, let's say like this, you can select the code that you want to run, and once you control and click, you can edit the text as well, like this. So test 1. Okay, now if you want, you can also use Activex buttons. Similarly, I'm gonna draw here. For this, you can right click and go to properties or use this, and from here you can change the text as well, or I think you can also click there and add it, but caption, let's say test 2 Activex, something like that. I'm gonna exit design mode. First close this, exit design mode. Okay, going back, double click on this and then put a code that you want to run. Okay, like this. So automatically this line of code, this button event, click event, has been added here. Similarly, this button has more events. Okay, we're gonna go more in depth at a later stage. I'm gonna save this, close this, and click here. Exit the design mode and click, so it will run the same code. That's another way to run it, and you can also add on runtime controls in this as well. We'll talk more on those. What else? Okay, one last example for this is you can also insert shapes, any of these shapes, and or you can import image from online, and then you can insert picture, and then you can run the same code using those. Okay, so for example, here I can say test 3 using shapes, make it bigger, and then you can change the properties, and then I'm gonna right click on the shape, assign a macro, and then select the macro. So there are various ways you can execute the macro like this. Okay, now this is not so useful yet, but it will give you a flavor of how to run it, how to construct your code, sub-procedures, how to write your function. Okay, in this section I'm gonna show you how to work with Excel objects. Then we'll start creating our first real-life project. Okay, as you know, Excel application contains various objects such as workbooks, worksheets, range, column rows, charts, pivot tables, shapes, and buttons, as you can see here, and the list goes on and on. Each object has its own set of features, also known as properties, and then its own set of uses, and those are called methods. Okay, now let's write this down. Let me just put it down here so we can visualize. So first is our application, which is in this example Excel. Now if you're writing in Word, the application will become Word document. Okay, and then within application there are workbooks, and under workbooks you can add sheets or worksheets, and then you have range, columns, rows, and maybe cells, and so on. And then within the worksheet you can add pivot tables, and then within pivot table, for example, you'll have pivot fills, and then it'll have items. So similarly, if you enter the table here, table also will have, you know, like the body, rows and column items, and so on. Okay, so the list will keep on going, but the structure, basic structure, goes on like this. Okay, now let me give you some more examples on application. For example, here we are using a property. We are reading application property username, and it returns us a username. Okay, for this demonstration, let me do press Ctrl G for immediate window, and then so you can press this as well, or shortcut is Ctrl Z. Now if you let's say we want to get application dot version, this will return 16.0. so my Excel version is this. Okay, the way to use this immediate window is, if you put a question mark, whatever you type here, it will return that particular value if you type it correctly. Okay, now you can go to object browser for all these objects, and then or you can press F2. We'll try few examples for each of these objects. Okay, now here I'm gonna copy this object and paste it here. Now you'll find methods, properties, events associated with these objects. All of them you can find it here. Okay, so for a start, you can just get familiarized. I have grouped by members. So this first symbol, this symbolizes properties. If I press U, so username is here. This is something we've used here, application dot, and then this object dot, all this, you know, like properties, methods will be listed once you do it. For example, if I don't group members, if I type application dot, you'll see all these options that are here in this area, right? Okay, active cell, active chart, and all this. So that's the way to connect the properties and the object with the properties or methods. Okay, by putting a dot. Let me just group this again for now. So these are properties symbol, and as you scroll down, these are methods. This symbolizes methods, and then if you go towards the bottom, you see this like lightning sign that is symbolizing events. Okay, so so far we've used workbook, open event, right? Let's try another example. Let's say instead of this, I'm gonna copy this block and paste it here. Okay, so you can have many procedures and functions as per your requirement. Let's say we just tried application.version. Well, let's say we want to get a version. Can do this, right? So if I want to quickly test the value of this particular function, sorry, I'm gonna make it here, and if I copy this function and paste here, and then put a question mark, and then put like the code or the method, whatever you want here, and then once you hit enter, it will run this particular okay, it's giving error, hold on. It will run that particular function and return you a value here. Okay, so for example, this one is still referring to this app user, that's why it's giving error. Okay, so 16.0. So let's say we want to try let's say build, maybe we can try this. Now instead of running a function like this, let me come here, question mark, application dot build, and this is the build number. Okay, so if you go to your product, I think you'll find that, and maybe we want to find the VBE version, or we can try that as well. .vbe.version. Okay, so 7.01. Help about this will give us this version. Okay, so there are many other examples that we can try. For example, we can just try application dot operating system. So this will give us the Windows is my Windows is Windows 7, and the bit that you're running at. Okay, so application, this will maybe at a later stage you'll use, like let's say that your program will run only for a specific version, so we can use a validation that okay, if the application version is lesser than 16.0, then just give a feedback to user that this software is not compatible with your Office version, for example. Okay, now let's try so we've tried about application. Now let's try for workbooks. Okay, for this demonstration, let me add multiple workbooks. Press Ctrl N as in Nancy, and then one more. I'll add 3 workbooks. Okay, like this, and then I'm gonna bring up the editor again. I'm gonna use Windows left arrow key, and then I'll bring the side. I'm gonna close this for now, or I'll just bring it out here. Okay, maybe not. So before we work on this workbook, what are the things that we can do with workbook? You can add new workbook. So for example, using application only, you can, now I'm just gonna write a new code, sub test object refer demo. So let's say application dot, and then you can find workbooks here dot add. So for example, this is here we are using workbook method called add, and if I run this, it's gonna add a new workbook. Okay, so before we go into that, that is one example. You can add a workbook, you can get the name of the workbook, you can save as workbook into a specific format, CSV, XLS, PDF, and so on, HTML. You can share, unshare, you can log the structures, and so on. There are many things you can do. The way to refer to the workbooks, let me just give you some example. So here we have 3 workbooks. Okay, the way to refer to workbooks will be there are, for example, once you type in Ctrl+J workbooks, and then as you open the bracket, it says index. Okay, so you can refer to the workbook by the position index number. So if I put 1 dot, and then you see that you can activate the workbook, you can do certain thing with that particular workbook. So let's say activate. Now if I run this, it's gonna activate whatever is the first workbook. Okay, this is the first workbook. So if I do 2, it's gonna activate second workbook and third workbook. Okay, Now the other way to refer to these workbooks will be you can specify the name here within the string. Okay, so whatever comes within these double quotes is string. Okay, a text basically. Now let's say we want to refer to this workbook, which is called lesson1.xlism. So let's try that. So I'm gonna run this. So currently I'm activating in book 2 manually, and once I run this, it will activate this book. Okay, it will go there. Okay, so this is how you can work with workbooks. Let's try another example. As you can see, I'm commenting this out, so it's not gonna run this, it's gonna directly run this next available line. Okay, now these books are not saved yet, but you still can refer to it. For example, book 2, and there's no extension yet. Now if I activate lesson 1 book and I run this, it'll go to this book. Okay, now since once you start writing to these cells and range and all this, it's important to know that you go by a hierarchy. For example, activate the workbook and then you go to specific sheet. Otherwise, if you just run the macro, it might run in whatever sheet or workbook it is currently open. So that's why we need to learn all this and get familiar with all these objects, their methods and their properties. Okay, now I'm going to save this. The next part about now we can also check how many workbooks are currently open. Again, I'm going to Control G and then I'm going to put a question mark, workbooks dot, and then count. It tells me there are 3 workbooks open. Workbooks dot, and then if I add, it's gonna open. Close is gonna close the workbook. Yeah, for now I think that's pretty much it. I'll close this. Now let's proceed to sheets. Okay, now for worksheet, the way to refer again will be same. You can refer to this. Okay, sorry, sheets, and then once you open the bracket, it will tell you you can refer by index. So I'm gonna say 1 dot activate. Okay, sorry. So at the moment third sheet is activated. Now this code is gonna go and activate this book first, so I'm gonna comment this out for now. I'll show you how to put all this together in a bit. Now if I run this, we are expecting the first step to be activated, sheet to be activated. Yeah, as you can see here. Now similarly, let's try the same approach. Let's refer it by name. I'm gonna comment this out. Just give me 1 second. This is actually in the log mode because I double click here. Let me go out here and then I'll go in here and continue to run this. Okay, now if I put in 3 here and rerun this, it's gonna activate this particular sheet. Now you can also press F5 and run this code, or as you already know, F8, and then you can keep running the code. Now as you know that when you're referring to sheets, you can also directly refer to the object name. Okay, so for now we are working with this lesson1.xlism. This is the book we are putting the code. Okay, so when you're doing that, you can refer to the object ID itself. Okay, so this is the ID and then this is the label. For example, let me demonstrate that. Demo. Now we can see the demo part is the label. Okay, this is just the caption, and then sheet 3 is the ID. Okay, basically. So if you have to refer, you can also refer it by like this, sheet 3 dot activate. Okay, you can also refer it like that. So you can, I'm just pressing F4. You can rename this sheet tree, the name, the ID part as well, as maybe you can say admin or something like that. Okay, so now this ID also has been renamed. Now you can refer to that using demo sheet admin dot activate. Okay, or you can say I'm gonna run this F5. If I go in here, F5, so it goes there. Similarly, you can also admin dot select as well. Okay, just press F5. So that this is different ways you can refer to it. Just going back to workbook, I forgot to mention, instead of the workbook name, if you always want to refer to this particular workbook, you can use this object name as well. For example, like Control J, this workbook dot activate. Okay, so you can also do that. I just run it. Okay, so let's say my cursor, my active workbook is this, and I run this, it's gonna come back here. Okay, now you can refer to this object name itself like this, admin, which is this, only when you are in this workbook. Okay, if you want to refer to this book, this particular name, for example, let's say that you put a name here, the object name as front end or something like this. Now if you try to refer to this dot, you're not even getting that option as well, because this is in the different workbook. Okay, so if you have to refer to other workbook sheets, then you'll go by this particular method. Okay, and then for that you have to even go and activate that particular workbook first. Now coming to so that is about the worksheet, how to activate the worksheet. Now let's say that you want to rename sheet, for example. So I've just created a new process called sheet. Let's try this on this particular sheet. Okay, I can say active sheet dot name is equal to this is the property, and then we can set a value to this. Let's call this VBA test. Okay, so this we have just changed the property, that is the caption of this particular sheet. What else can we do with the worksheet? We can add a sheet as well. And okay, so as we go on, we'll explore more examples. Let's not go too far into this for now. Now coming to range. Okay, I'm just gonna put a new sub, range example. Now you pause the video and try each of these like examples, how to refer to workbook, how to refer to sheets and range and so on. Okay, now when you're referring to range, there are various ways to do it. For example, the easiest way is within these brackets you can specify the object name. It could be not even just a range. So for example, let's say we want to go to D7. I can type in D7 here dot select. Okay, now I'll place my cursor here. When I run this code, it will go to D7. Okay, and you can say D7 dot value. We're putting a value to that cell. Let's say hello. Okay, now this is one way to do it. Or if you have to read this particular value, you can also do it like this. It will return whatever value is there. So if I put in if I rerun this, it will return that. So for example, let's say that message box excuse me. So this is example of how to read, this is example of how to write. Okay, if I just disable this part for now, and then I say VBA A to Z, and I run this code, it will return me the value of that particular cell. Now similarly, the syntax, there are various syntax. Now range is made up of rows and columns, for example. So let's try another example. Cells, and then you can specify here row index, column index. Okay, so let's say we want to go here. You'll specify 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th column, and then 5th row. Okay, so cells 5, and then column is also 5, for example, and then you say select. Now let me just disable this part. I'll just comment them out. If you want to comment bulk ones, you can use this option. Okay, uncomment all, comment all. Okay, you can select and do that. Now if I run again this code, it goes to this particular section. So this is how you can refer to it by rows and columns. Now the reason why I'm showing you all this is like different scenarios will present itself to you, and then you can make, instead of 5, this can be a dynamic value later on, similarly the column as well. And then the way to set the value again is same, dot value is equal to cells example, right? I'll just say it like this. Okay, and if you want to read again, you'll do the same thing. Message box cells this dot this. Okay, now if I change, if I comment this out, if I change the value here, that's 3. If I run this, it's gonna return whatever value is there. So again, this is how you can you are reading the value of this particular object, and then here in this example you are setting a value. This object dot value is equal to this, so you're setting it like that. Okay, the other way will be using range statement method object. Here you can specify in the exact way, which is you know, like there. So let's say E5 dot value, and then here you can put in the value, hello, something like that. So let me comment this out again. Okay, and then in the same way you can read again range dot value. Let me just do debug dot print this. So debug dot print will basically print whatever you specify here in this particular window. Okay, now let's, oops, I think I'll just bring it up here because message box keeps popping up. So instead of that, no, instead of E5, let's say that this is G5. So write a value called range to G5, and then print the value here. Okay, I'm gonna, okay, so it draw the value here, and then it return whatever value was written there as well. What else? Now you can also, let's not go too far into this, but I'll show you one more example. Within the range you can specify the cells, for example range, and then within here you specify cell 1, cell 2. Okay, so cells, and then here you put in row 1, and then let's see 4th column, and then second cell. So basically it's like you are copying and pasting it here. Okay, now I'm just gonna talk about it. So basically what this is saying is, I'm gonna get rid of all this. In this method, once you follow this approach, you can specify what will be the first, for example this, what will be the first let's say that you are selecting a range like this. Okay, you in this method you are just specifying the first cell and the last cell like this. Okay, so let's say I want to do this selection like this. First cell is B2, which is column 2, and row number is 2. Okay, row number 2, column 2, and this one is 8, right? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9. So the column is 8 and the row is 9, this particular cell, right? You can also print this, by the way, active cell dot address, something like that, right? So if I run this now, okay, so this method is also very useful when you are constructing a dynamic range. Like you have to dynamically set what will be the starting row and column, what will be the ending row and column. Okay, so this is very useful. Just remember that and just play around with that. Try more examples by putting another value here, maybe 5th row, 5th column, like this. Okay. In range, let me just talk one last thing about offset. Let me copy this. This feature will be, this method will become very useful. So range E01 dot offset, and then bracket open. Using this method, you can offset like number of rows or columns that you specified here. Okay, so let's say that you want to offset 1 row down, 1 column towards the right. You can specify offset row 1 and then dot 1 column. Okay, dot select. Now if I run this, we are expecting to select this. Okay, now if you specify 2, it will go 2 columns away. Okay, now if you specify 0 here, if we say same row, don't offset, don't go down or up, then you can do in this method. Now instead of let's say this is A5, you can also go negative like this. Okay, so from A5 it went up 1 row and then 2 columns away. Okay, so this is very important. Now if we have to put all this together, let's say that you want to write a value to let's say a sheet called VBA test. Basically how we are gonna write it is like demo2. First we want to activate this book. Let's say that the code was run from another book. We don't want to write a value to that particular, or for that matter the sheet is not going to be there in that workbook, so it's going to give you an error. So the way to approach this will be, you'll first specify which workbook you want to activate. This workbook refers to the book where you are writing your code. Okay, now second, from this workbook we are only interested in this particular sheet, so I'm gonna say sheets, and then within the bracket double quotes, I'm gonna put this, and then I'll say activate. Okay, now from this particular sheet, let's say that I want to write a value to let's say A5. Here you can say demo2, whatever value you want, you can pass it. Now I'm gonna press F8. Now I'm in this book. Okay, book 1. When I run this, it's gonna activate this lesson 1 workbook, and then it's gonna go to this particular tab, this tab, and then write a value in A5. Now for testing, I'm just gonna navigate away from that. Okay, so book 1 is here. I'm gonna press F8. Now it came to this workbook, it's activated. Now if I run this line, it's gonna activate this particular sheet. Okay, if I run this again, it's gonna place in A5 demo2 value. Okay, so demo 2. Okay, so that's how you're gonna go through it. You can also directly pass the value in one single line, which is not important by the way, but you can do that. Instead of activating, you can also specify in this fashion. Let me make this bigger. So this line is equivalent to this particular line. These 3 lines can be written in this method as well. You don't have to keep activating. You can directly go and put a value there. Okay. Let me make this smaller. Okay, so this way also works. Okay. Now we can also quickly check the object browser for this things that we have checked. Let's look for range. I'm gonna select range, and then these are members for range. For example, things that we can do with range. For example, when we right click, you can see like copy, cut, and all this. Delete, everything should be here as a member. For example, copy. Okay, so here is copy. For example, if we have to try this out, range test 2, let's say we want to copy from this range, e5.copy, e5, let's put a copy number here. Let's say we want to copy this. If I run this now, if I run this code, it copies, right? Now let's say we want to paste. If we want to paste, we have to use sheet, but if we want to paste special, then yeah, that can be, let's say we want to paste special in a6 dot paste special, and then you can choose option. You can paste all, you can paste only the comments, formulas, values, and so on. So let's say we want to paste values only. Okay, so let's run this. F8, this is copies, A6, it pastes there. Okay, so I'm just giving you all these small examples so you can get familiar with how you can deal with objects, their methods, and so on. So as we do more examples down the line, you'll get more familiar with it. For example, if you look for paste, there are so many paste here. So worksheet, so we can say copy this, and then let's say we want to select A1, and then we want to paste here. Okay, so active sheet dot paste. Hope this is gonna work. F8, copy, selected this range, and paste. Okay, so this is another example. So similarly, pivot tables are there, other rows and columns. There are so many things we can do. So down the line, as we progress, now that you're familiar with how you can join, like these objects together and then manipulate the property, right? Use the methods associated with it. Okay, now let's go ahead and start designing our form, and then learn how to, let me open this, learn how to export the data from the form to the data tab here. Okay, so here basically it's just a worksheet like this. If I enable the grid line, this is how it is. I'll show you from scratch everything, and then I'll show you how to move this data or copy this data here. Okay, so I'm gonna add a new workbook. For now, I'm gonna close this unused workbooks. I'll just save this one and forget that. Okay, so this is a new workbook. I'm gonna save this as XLSM file to the desktop folder, and we'll call this project. I'll just call this project 1. Now the way I designed this is a very simple like a worksheet with cells. For example, if I remove this, you see there's a watermark coming back. There's no code for this. You can easily design this. I'll quickly demonstrate that now. So first, I'm gonna create a block like this. Okay, put a border of your choice, just like this, and then to the top as well, something like this. And I'll just copy this one. This is calibrate 14. You can see there is that small like a space there. Similarly this side as well, I'm gonna do like this. And then here comes version 1.0, and then there's the date. These two rows are resized small like this, and then comes this labels for the fields. Just gonna copy and paste it here. Okay, and then between these cells, if I enable the grid lines here, show grid lines. Okay, and if I enable the grid lines, and then here the row height between these are smaller, so I just put it in this fashion. Okay, or you can make that bigger as well, and then this column is bigger like this, and then there's a small like a hidden column that is, I'm just gonna talk about it in a bit. Just to visualize it better, I'm just gonna turn it off. Now to make this cell look like a text box, what you can do is you can bring up the properties window, right click, properties, format cells. Okay, format cells. Okay, so once this here, go to border. From here you can select, first we'll select this black, and then we'll put it here like this. And then, okay, just give me 1 second. We need to select this hidden column as well, not hidden exactly, but this one. Let me make it big for now, like this. Okay, select these two columns. Control 1 is a shortcut key to bring this up. Now for this border side, I'm going to use this dark, and for this side I'm going to use this. Okay, like this. Okay, so now it looks like this. You can just copy and paste this for these two cells. Okay, and maybe we can make this text box bigger. Okay, so this is where we're gonna capture user inputs, and here we are gonna put a watermark. So for example, if I go here, I'm gonna unhide everything. For example, what I did was I just put this text somewhere here like this, and then this is basically I'm saying here that if putting a formula here that if this value is blank, if it is equal to blank, then just show this, else don't show this. Okay, now here what I did was I like align right like that. So what I did now, I put more space so that this comes in the middle here. Can use this property. Just maximize this. Okay, and then I formatted this particular cell as like so that it looks like this, not very visible, and then I make the like column really small. Okay, so similarly I can just copy and paste this here. Okay, so this can be hidden later once you're done. For example, I'll just select this column, Control Shift right arrow key, and then I'll hide all the columns. Okay, hide, and here is the watermark. Okay, simple as that. Now if you type in the name, it goes away, and it remove it, it just shows up there again. Okay, so it's a simple way to guide the user. Alternatively, you can also obviously use here validation. Where did I bring this from? I always use a shortcut key. Sometimes I don't remember what are all this. Alt DL is what I did. Alt. Where's the? I don't even see the DL. Anyway, so validation list. Instead of list, any value you can put input message like enter client name. This is actually not VBA. You can also do it like this. So once they click on the cursor, it just shows down here. You can also do that if you want. Okay. I'm just gonna clear that validation. So now the cells are ready. What else did I do? So I'm just gonna copy this. These are just dummy text that I put here just to show that, okay, this is how it can be done, like sample instructions. And the button, and then this particular cell. So you can also pop up a message box and tell the user that, okay, it's completed successfully, but once they click on it, it's gonna go off. So the other way to show is you can put a value here. You can write what did the process last do, last execution status, right? And here for the button, you already know for this, you can insert this, or it's up to you. So what I did with that button was I put it like this. I think I made it transparent, and then submit data, something like that. And then I put it in the middle, make it bold. Yeah, so something like this. And then this is where we're gonna put our code now. Control S. This one is not gonna be too visible. We don't want to get focused here. Okay, so now we can write a code. Let's call this form. Now this input is just a demonstration. This input can be anything. For example, this is client, date, and amount, which we want to send it here in data tab. For now, I'm just gonna copy this data here so that it does not look too empty. I'll just get rid of all this data like this. Okay, so once the user clicks here, we want to submit the data here. Now this is a small demonstration, but then you can use this same example to write this particular input to another workbook. You can submit it to the database, to the servers. There are so many things you can do. You can implement this for, let's say you're recording attendance, you're recording sales. There are so many things you can do with this. Okay, so now you already know how to refer to the workbook, to the worksheet, to the range, read the value. So we are going to use that to accomplish this. Okay, so I think we are good here. I can go ahead and close this. Okay, all right, now let's start writing our code. I'm gonna go to Visual Basic Editor, and then I'm just gonna copy this and put it here so that I can show it to you. And now I'm gonna close this lesson 1 file so that there is no confusion. And from here I'm gonna hide the headers as well, just for now. And normally what I do is like I insert a row here like this, and then put the height of the row to 1, and then I normally hide the cursor there like that. Okay, Okay, so going to Visual Basic Editor. The normal practice is go to to this VBA project properties, and then you can name the properties. Okay, so let's say this is data input project or something like that. And then if you want to protect your code, you can go to protection, and you can put a password here as well. If you do, just remember that. Okay, 1 2 3. I'm just putting 1 2 3. Okay, now you'll be able to see that instead of the book name, it has changed to data input. And maybe I can just put a PJ just for project. Okay, now this is the file name, this is the name of the project. Okay, like we did earlier, I'm going to insert a module, and then I'm going to just rename this module to data capture, something like that. So let's say that you have lots of processes that you need to create, then it's better to rename these modules so it makes sense. Okay, okay, so the best way, especially in the real scenario, if you design something like this for real, then it's better to put a name range to this. For example, here I'll put client instead of D9. I'm going to rename this to, let's say, or I can go to formulas, name manager, or I can click define name, and then this is going to be client, and then it refers to this particular value. Okay, like this. So now instead of that particular cell, which was D9, now it's client. Okay, so when you're writing range, and then you can put client instead of D5. The good thing about this approach is that even if you insert more like rows, for example, you have to reorganize your form, then you don't have to change the code. Otherwise, let's say that at first you wrote D12, and then once you add more rows in between like this, instead of D12 you have to go back to your code and change it to D13. Okay, so the good way, especially when you're doing in this approach, is to rename this this range to a defined name. Okay, so I'm gonna add this as date. Date is actually could be a reserved name, so maybe you can just put a P parameter date and okay. Similarly, I'm gonna do this for amount, define name, and then amount, click OK. Now we have renamed these cells to a name range. Okay, so it's good because we didn't cover this example earlier, so now we can use that example as well. And then I can make this small so that the focus is not on the version, but it's on the name of the form. And then now comes our code. So let's write a code. Let's call this sub. All right. Let's put Excel this side and put the code this side. Now sub, and then let's call this add new data. If you cannot start with a number, and also just watch out for those. It will give you an error. Just put a name similar to this, and let's put a command. This will capture user input to data, something like that. So it's a good practice to mention something about this, and then you put a date as well, for example 18/2020, and then in the future, once you come back, you will know exactly what the code is supposed to do. Okay, the first thing is that we need to read these values. Okay, so as you already know, like you can put range, and then you can specify the range that you're interested in. So for example, we are interested in client, like this. I'm just gonna show this here, dot value. So right now it's blank, so let's input something. Let's say POMI. so it returned PAMI. Okay, now you already know how to read and you already know how to write, so we are gonna write the data tab. So here we'll say sheets and then data dot activate. Let's say we want to go in the way we learned earlier, and then here we'll say range, let's say A9. In A9 we want to put the client value. Okay, now if you just write it like this, it's gonna refer to whatever is if you just hard code like the address like this, it's gonna refer to the current sheet. So the good way is to always add the name of the sheet as well. For example, in this is form, so sheets dot, and then here, so we're saying that sheets data, in this data sheet in A9 we want to put the value of whatever is there in client, and then from this particular sheet. Okay, so this particular sheet range value is equal to this sheet dot range dot value. Okay, for example, if I run this code now, okay, so it added the value there. Or you can for example, if you have to do in the other approach, you can say range, let's copy this first. We want to activate this first, dot activate. Okay, this sheet is activated now, and then from here we want to copy this, so we'll say range dot copy, and now we'll go to data tab, this tab dot activate, and then we can say this value, this particular range dot, we can paste special, and then we can paste it as values. We can also do that, and then we can say application dot got copy mode false. This will simply just clear the clipboard. Okay, this particular line. Now let me just run F8. Now just imagine I'm here. Oh, sorry. So it activated this particular tab. It copied this value, and then it goes to data tab, and then in A9 it pasted, and then if you look here, the paste is enabled, but as soon as I press F8, this will get grayed out. Okay, because the clipboard is gone. Okay, all right, so this is one way to do it, and this is another way. You can directly specify that, okay, this particular range from this particular sheet value will be equal to this particular value. Okay, so this is how you can set it as well. Now similarly, if we just replicate these three lines for client, pdate, and amount, and then here A9, B9, C9, right? So I'm gonna clear this. I'm gonna put a date here and the amount here. Now I'm gonna run this. Okay, so the value has been added here. In this method, this is more efficient way to do this actually. Now I'm gonna run again. Okay, so it is added. But in this, if we follow this method, it's gonna keep adding to this particular cell only because this is static. Okay, so now I'm gonna teach you a simple loop that you can use, and then we'll find the last row with empty cell, and then it's gonna write it there. Okay, now let's create one more process here. Sub loop test. test. Okay, now this loop will learn do until. This is the syntax statement. Here we'll put a logic. Okay, we're gonna put a logic here, and then we'll put a loop. Whatever you put in between this particular area will keep on running till the time this particular logic becomes true. Okay, so let me demonstrate this here. For example, let's say we want to keep running this particular code till this particular cell value is 10 or greater. What we can do is range A1 dot value is greater than or equal to 10. Okay, so at the moment it's blank, so it's 0, and then we need to increment this particular cell as well. Maybe at first we can say 0, and then I'm gonna get rid of this. We'll increment the value of A1. A1 dot value is equal to whatever value is already there plus 1. Okay, well, I'm just gonna increment 1, 1, 2, and then as soon as it reaches equal to 10, it will stop, and then it will go down here. Okay, and then here we can say message box complete, something like that. Now I'm gonna do F8. Okay, so this particular line executed and this turned into 1. Okay, now this particular block is gonna keep running till the time this is 10. So here the logic could be whatever, you know, like it could be based on scenarios, but now the idea is just to learn this is how the loop works. Now F8 again, so it changed to 2, changed to 4, changed to 5, and so on, and then now it's 9. Now it's already 10, so it's gonna go down here. Okay, all right, so that's how it works. This particular loop, do until the condition is true, and then you write some code here to alter whatever that particular scenario is. Otherwise it's gonna run forever, or maybe we can put a condition. Again, in the next chapter, following chapter, we're gonna go into all this, but for now we're gonna keep it simple. Okay, now going back to our code, what we can do here is we will activate this particular sheet, and then now we are gonna write this, use this loop to keep going from here all the way down, and then whenever it finds an empty cell, it's gonna write to that particular line. Okay, so let's try that. Going back up here, I'm gonna disable all this. So all these are commented out now. That means this part is not gonna run. So first it will activate this particular sheet, and then it's gonna activate A2 range activate or select. Okay, range A2 dot select, and then from here we want to start looping down till here, or whatever is the last row. So we'll say do until active cell dot value is equal to blank, and then we're gonna say loop, and here we can say active cell dot offset. We talked about this earlier. Now we want to offset. At first it is here. Okay, now we want to offset 1 row down, so 1, and then 0 column dot select. Okay, now this code will keep on running. It will keep on doing next till the time the cell is blank. Okay, now I'm gonna just write a stop here. Okay, now when I run this, it's gonna stop here. Or it's not a big data set, I'm gonna press F8. Okay, so it selected this cell. F8, it keeps on going, selecting next cell. the moment the cell is blank, it will stop running that. Okay, see that. So now we are gonna put a value here. Okay, now I'm gonna copy this block of code. Now instead of specifying this particular range, I will say active cell dot value. This value is gonna be whatever is there in clients. We're saying that this particular value is gonna be whatever is here. Okay, sheets form dot range this client, range client dot value. Okay, so similarly we want to write in the next the date value, right? So we'll say so just imagine it is selected here, and now to write to this value we will say from active cell we want to offset. We're not going to go down, so 0 rows, comma, and then we'll say 1 column. Okay, 1 column dot value is equal to, now here we'll put the p date. Now p date is date range, I mean the name range, again this value. Okay, so similarly for the, I'm just gonna copy and paste this code, this line, copy, paste. Now in the second offset, second 1 2 offset 2 times, and then here is gonna be amount. Okay, and the amount is coming from here, amount. Okay, so now we can test this code. Let's say this is Lucy and then this amount. Now let's run this code from here, F8. Okay, I'm gonna make this Excel smaller so we can see side by side. Okay, now it's gonna start going down, so it's checking if the cell is blank. It's not, then this particular line just selects 1 row down, right? So it keeps on going down till the time it finds that cell. Now it will stop running because the cell is empty. The loop will stop running this particular part, and now it comes down to active cell. Active cell is the cell that is currently on, and then it plays Lucy there, it plays the date, it plays the value. Okay, hold on, active cell dot offset. Oh my bad, this particular part is supposed to be this range is the amount, and this is supposed to be like this. Okay, and there comes the amount. Now we can format this as well to currency. When you're working with amount, it's advisable to use currency. Okay, so that is what we want to accomplish today. Maybe once you're done, we want to write last execution status. Now we can just say bring back this, so from sheet 1, so we can say sheet 1 dot, and here we can say range 5 dot value is equal to for now we just have this option. Okay, tomorrow or in the next video when we learn how to use if, how to use additional loops, how to use variables and all, I'll make it very simple for you guys, and then it should be easy. Okay, so now let's try. I'm gonna add maybe Adam and something like that. Okay, now we will hook our code, right click, assign a program, add new data. Okay, and then okay, so Adam, maybe we can return a date and time here. So along with this status we'll say ampersand, and then here we'll just say now. So now is basically just gonna return, it's a inbuilt function. Now it will return date and time. Okay, let's try and see. Okay, so date and time is included when it last executed. Okay, Now if you don't want to go here, maybe after it is completed you can come back here, dot activate. Now sheet 1 is form, basically form, the word form is the caption and this is like the ID. Okay, now if I write here as maybe Sylvia, and then here you put in the amount. Now this amount again can be currency, and this can be put here in the middle, similarly like this. Okay, so it goes there, but then it comes back here. Okay, so this data has been submitted successfully. Okay, so that is gonna be all for this lesson. Try to go through you know, and type out everything. It's very important that you type, and if you don't understand specific part of it, rewatch it again. Try to go slow, try to understand. At first it might be a bit it'll take a little bit of time to get used to this syntax, and though it's very simple, at first there's always a curve. Okay, and then if you're not able to resolve anything, you put your questions in the video comment section. Okay, and then I'll try to come back to you guys as soon as possible. So I work full-time, but mostly in the evening I am free, so I'll try to come back to you guys, but then there is a waiting window there. But I'll do my best to come back to you guys as soon as possible. And if you have any questions, again, do not send the email. I won't be able to read all your emails. Instead, put in the comments so that others also can benefit from your question and the answers. And the assignment for this particular lesson will be you'll replicate one more input box here. Okay, and then that input box is gonna be like the client type. You can call it client type. And then so here you'll create a client type, you'll add this same box with the same watermark, similar like this, and then when you click, you'll add a new column here, and that value is supposed to write down here in these 4 cells. Okay, so that is your assignment. Once you complete this assignment, then I'll send the in the following video, whoever completes the assignment will get the link to the following tutorials or lesson. Okay, so I hope this has helped you. This is a bit long video because I don't want to rush into it, but I want to go slow, and so that you guys are able to grasp the, you know, like how you can work with objects, how you can access the properties, how you can use the methods, and so on. So that is all for this particular lesson. Thank you so much for watching. And yes, if you have any specific requests, maybe you can email me, but it will be more beneficial if you could comment in the video comment section. Okay, so thank you so much for taking this lesson again, and I'll talk to you guys in the next lesson. Thank you. Bye-bye.